It is Monday, 16th of September, 2024. Welcome to the God 10 video. If there's a bit of background noise in this one, it's because opposite me is some building work going on. Also, they're chopping down a bunch of trees. Don't know why, probably to make way for 5G masts A. So I'm hoping the noise doesn't bleed through, but either way, I just wanted to crack on and get this one out and share a few thoughts. A few people have been kind enough to express concern about my spiritual, mental, and emotional well-being since I've started putting out this series of videos. So I definitely appreciate the concern, but really I'm okay because I've come to a place of acceptance. And I think my grounding for this has been the work that I've been doing for many years into the music industry and entertainment and popular culture generally. So when I think back, when I first got into conspiracy research, I came to realize that the world is nothing like we thought it was in terms of who really runs things. The groups, the networks, the secret societies that are in control of all aspects of organized society. So that is a bitter pill to swallow when you first come across it, but really it's conspiracy 101. It's baby truther material. That's the first stage in the truth discernment process. And for me, that involved looking at the music industry, which I'd been a part of, and I'd loved music up to that point. Well, in the 80s and 90s at least, I'd started to fall a bit out of love with it in the early 2000s. But my research took me down some unwelcome paths in terms of discovering who many of these bands and these artists and these DJs and producers really were, where they'd most likely come from, some of their dubious family backgrounds and affiliations, and the fact that they were pushing social engineering agendas. So I had to come to a reluctant acceptance that many of the people that I'd looked up to at that point and respected, and many of them had been personal role models to me, weren't necessarily who I thought they were. So as the work continued, and as I made it my business to research this stuff, to put it into my books and my talks, an acceptance emerged. I just had to accept that this is the state of affairs. And then, if you are prepared to go a step further beyond that, you start to ask questions about the true nature of this realm in the first place. You can spend a lifetime looking at all the fine detail, the names, the places, the dates, the detail of the way these agendas are carried out. But eventually, the big question emerges, well, why are we here in the first place? What is this game of life really all about? How did we get here? What is really in control of this realm of existence? And so this is where I'm at. And I know a lot of other people have arrived at this stage as well, down to the huge amount of feedback that I've received, both in terms of emails and comments left in many of the video threads. And also when I've been meeting people out and about and they've just been stopping me and having conversations with me on the spot. So for me, and I know many others, we've reached a place of acceptance. It is what it is. You can't change this place because it's unchangeable. It's set up by a malevolent entity or force to generate fear-based energy and suffering and trauma and all the rest of it. It sounds grim, I know, but I didn't make it this way. I found it this way. I'm merely reporting on what I find. And it's very much the same thing as when I do presentations or talks or videos on, let's say, the Beatles or the Doors or David Bowie. People just don't want to hear it about these groups. They don't want to hear about all these suspect connections that they have. But again, it is what it is. Other forces, other parties made it that way. And I and other researchers are merely commenting on what we found. So it's the same process with this God question and considerations on the true nature of this realm, what we're doing here, where we're going. I'm at a place of acceptance. because we just have to make the best of it for however long we're around. And it seems to me that this simulation reality has been set up to self-govern. So there's no real need for entities to be presiding over it and poring over the fine detail of what goes on here and all our lives on a daily basis, because it's been set up as a kind of AI algorithm controlled reality. And it's analogous to a website, a company website, a corporation, the way they operate. So let's just take as an example Ryanair, that lovely airline run by that nice man, Michael O'Leary, of Bilderberg Group fame. So, for instance, if you choose to book a Ryanair flight, let's say you want to go on your summer holidays to Alicante. So you can go on ryanair.com, you book a flight, let's say Stansted to Alicante, and you put in your dates and stuff, who all the passengers are. And then the website offers up a bunch of options. Ryanair have been doing this since the start, and it seems their business model has been taken on by pretty much every other airline in the world, where they just bolt on added costs. The initial flight appears attractive in terms of its cost, but what they don't tell you is that it's going to cost you extra to take on suitcases. It's going to cost you extra to seat your family together if you want to pick your seats and make sure you're not randomly scattered throughout the plane, things like this. The food and drink is, of course, extortionate prices, and that's how they make their money. They just add on all these extra things. But the website takes care of that. So you'll book the flight, then it will offer you the opportunity to book your suitcases and maybe book some food ahead of time. It will offer you priority boarding. It might offer you car hire and discounts to tourist attractions at your destination, things of this nature. But there's no humans controlling this. There's nobody overseeing this process and watching over your booking and offering you this stuff. The system is doing it. And I think that's what's going on in this reality. It's been set up rather like an AI controlled corporate website where behaviors and actions that take place here are automated. And it's been specifically constructed to cultivate all this fear, pain, suffering, and all the rest of it. So the best thing that any of us who come to these realizations can do is try and navigate our way through it as best we can. I definitely don't take a nihilistic view to all of this, which I think some people have got it twisted and they think that I've sunken into a very dark place. No, it's just a place of acceptance. And I personally feel like being kinder to everyone else and to other living things out of a recognition that we literally are all in this together. So you can be nihilistic, you can be negative, you can be a selfish shit and tread all over everyone else if you choose to. Probably a great career in politics waiting for you if you do. Mr. Starmer. Sorry, Sir. Sir Keir. Let's get it right. But I think a much better approach is to recognize that we are all brothers and sisters and we're all trying to make our way through this maze as best we can. So we may as well be supportive of each other. We may as well be as generous and as helpful to others as we can. And maybe together we can find a way out of this. So in the last video, I spoke about some possible preparations that we might make for the time when we pass over out of this reality, leave these meat suit bodies and go back to other states of consciousness. And I do accept that there is a creative force out there, a generative force behind everything, which people would call God. I don't accept that the original God of creation is the one that presides over this shithole hell world. No, that's a different kind of entity altogether. But beyond that, it is possible to return to original source from which we emanated. And I think there are probably ways that we can prepare for that process. So the idea of the reincarnation soul trap has become a very popular one. It's been discussed on previous videos, plus in a few conversations that I've had with guests this year. And one of the suggestions which came up in my chat with Howdy McCoskey was what he refers to as a recapitulation exercise. And I think Eric Dubay mentioned this as well. And the idea is that if we encounter these beings of light and the white tunnel of light when we pass over, and we're enticed or coerced into coming back to, resolve karma and sort out stuff that we didn't sort out in these lives, and to undergo growth and evolution, and all these ways that we're gaslit, presumably, in terms of this suggestion, gaslit and guilt tripped into coming back here against our will. Part of that process involves a life review, we're told. Many near-death experience survivors have come back and said that that's what they encountered. So every detail of their life flashed before them, and the focus is on your shortcomings. So things you got wrong, things you're ashamed of, things you feel guilty about. So the idea of doing this so-called recapitulation exercise, I prefer to call it a reconciliation exercise, because you're not capitulating to anyone or anything. It's reconciliation. And I mentioned this in the past video, so I've started to do it. I've got this notebook and I've only just started. It's obviously going to take a very long time, but I've started in my own handwriting to write down details of my life. It's important to do it in your handwriting so that it's personal to you, not just typed up on a computer. It's the lost art of handwriting. And it involves you, yourself, voluntarily going through all the details of your life. Now, when you get to my age, it takes quite some time to go through every detail of your life, but it's a good way to pass the long winter months ahead, I tell you, doing this. And it involves being very candid and very honest with yourself. So the aspects of your life that you are ashamed of, that you feel guilty about, that you're not proud of, you just have to be very, very blunt about that and get all that stuff down and say what you did to someone else. Express it, and try to consider the effect that that had on that other person. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I feel better to do it in these lives while we've still got the chance. And then if we are faced with this life review through these beings when we pass over, and if it is part of a reincarnation soul trap, I don't know if that concept is real, but I think it's worth considering and preparing for just in case it is. Then you can say, already done that, mate. Already been through my life review. I've faced my demons. I've done that dark night of the soul. I've recognized how my actions may have impacted negatively on others, and I've come to terms with it. I've reconciled it all, and I don't need to do that. So I'm going to choose to stand in my power in recognition that I'm sovereign and an expression of original source consciousness. And no matter what methods of coercion and trickery and gaslighting you attempt to use on me, I'm not having it. The answer is no, 100% of the way. I'm not going back. I'm going beyond. That is the kind of resolve that we have to have. It's very synchronistic that my good friend Robin in Australia, out there in WA, just before I started to record this video, sent me a statement which she'd seen in a shop out there in Australia. So she was entering this shop, noticed this sign, took a picture of it and sent it to me. So let me just read this out. I expect to pass through this world but once. Any good thing, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any fellow human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Isn't that the kind of determination that we need to have if we're to avoid being tricked into coming back into this place? I feel it is. So I want to move on now to some feedback. One of the great things about doing these videos all these months is the great messages that so many people have sent my way. And they've raised some really good points. And I think many of these are worth sharing. So let me read a few of these out. And we've got some themes that are going to start to develop here as we go on. First one, a premise of the realization of non-duality is non-volition. With that said, and just my opinion, the guilt and shame we experience is all part of the demiurge programming. There's never been any personal choice here in this realm. I believe this is part of the demiurge's program, and the only choice we have is at the life review to say, no, your construct based on cause and effect, which you created, imprisoned me in the matrix. Any thoughts or action were not mine by default. Therefore, I now choose to part from this web into the truth. Goodbye. It's a bit like Anne Robinson on The Weakest Link back in the day. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. Yeah, okay. See you then. Didn't want to be here in the first place. I can cite authors who helped me: Robert Sapolsky, Richard Oerton, Bernardo Kastrup, as well as sailor Bob Adamson, who support the idea of non-volitional living. So the idea that we were forced here and we can't actually be held responsible for any of our actions because we were never really given a choice. So the next one, I've been delving into this for so long now, and the one thing I just don't get is this need to do the life review in preparation for when we pass over into that realm. Yeah, I get it. It's all bullshit and run by some evil fucks. So why on earth do we need to play that game with them, knowing it's all a game? And that life review is part of their trump card to send us back. We all have regrets. We've all done things we're ashamed of, knew it was wrong and did it anyway, etc. We've also been played into believing a whole load of non-truths and lies, which contributed to us making some bad choices. So when you're living in a suffering pit of hell, where it's been specially constructed to cultivate fear and pain and trauma, you don't really have much choice, and you can't really be held responsible for the way you respond to that kind of situation, because you get put into fight or flight. You get traumatized, you get anxious, you get stressed because of the conditions that you, in my opinion, have been forced into. So how can you then be gaslit into feeling guilty about what you did? You didn't fucking want to be here in the first place, again, in my opinion. So I've deviated from the correspondence there. Let's go back to it. Isn't it enough for us to forgive ourselves? Do we even need to forgive others? Why not just accept that this has been a raw deal? We were tricked, held hostage, and messed with every step of the way, and just say, no, no thank you, no more, I'm out of here. When you find yourself before this council of advisors doing this life review, cough, choke, I would much rather look them in the eye and say, reveal yourself, your true self. It's a game. Call it. Stand in your sovereignty, in your own power. To me, it seems like a mistake to even play that game. I can just imagine these beings looking like some wise old men in white robes, when in fact they're probably some hideous looking reptiles. I liked what Wes Penra said about looking for a hole in the grid and going for it and not looking at the white light tunnel. That's about the only part of his stuff that resonated with me, this person says. So the next one is going to be considered taboo and controversial by some, but it must be clear by this point that I'm prepared to go to these areas and ask questions that others aren't and raise subjects that others feel very uncomfortable about. So it's the question of opting to remove yourself from this realm, to take your own life. Okay, so this is not me advocating that action by any means. Let me make that clear. But we're just discussing it. We're just getting it out there. It's not talked about in polite society. It's demonized as a concept by organized religions and more New Age spiritual traditions. But why is that? Why can't we talk about this? We own our own bodies, right? And so we bear the ultimate choice in terms of what we do with our bodies. You can become an alcoholic if you choose. You can become a drug addict if you choose. You can eat junk food all your life if you choose. You can remove yourself from this realm if you choose. It is your right. I mean, there's the impact that it might have on others that are left behind to consider, but ultimately it's every individual's choice. So, that being said, let's get into this piece of correspondence. Somebody wrote in to say, if we are faced with the continual nature of suffering brought about by simple existence, the logical mind is bound to take the next step. Where does suicide fit into this? YouTube's probably going to ban this just based on that word alone. Let me see if I can rescue the video by not mentioning that word again. Is S the logical result of the desire to end suffering? Surely, if we are faced with the soul trick after physical death, then logically it follows that we will still arrive at the same place no matter what the circumstances of our deaths. It doesn't matter if you wait until you're 90 and you fade away of some terrible disease after 15 years of extreme discomfort, or whether in an instant you decide to remove yourself at a much earlier stage. We're still going to end up at the same place, facing the same circumstances, right? I will say that I'm not prone to S or encouraging anyone in that direction, but it's a worthwhile thought experiment. Would it not bring our opportunity for release from the trick more under our control simply because we would be prepared for it? We would know when it's coming. Once that question came to mind, I started to consider all of the pressure from religions against S and laws and society. Why would all this apparatus be set in motion to keep everyone from heading towards their increasing suffering through circumstance, sickness, disease, and old age? Unless that's the point, to keep it all going. They don't want us exiting early because they want us suffering into old age and continuing to undergo all the stress and all the hassle and the hardships that life in this realm brings. As I said above, I have no answers, and these are the questions I'm grappling with at the moment, and I was moved to share this with you. So, yeah, grateful for that one. And the next one continues in a similar vein. I just wanted to mention where you speak of near-death experiences of my occurrence when I was in my early 20s. I had a very bad teenage and young adult years and attempted S 3 times. On the third attempt, I was almost successful, having used a volatile liquid I took from a chemical company I worked at. I also experienced an amazingly bright light that was so comforting I was led into a tunnel. It's always the same account, isn't it? I was also deafened by a massive, roaring, thunderous sound, which, despite its volume, was beautiful and pulled me towards it. The light and the sound were leading me in only one direction. The sensation of peace and relief was overwhelming. Then, I presume, as death came about, I dropped the bottle of liquid on my naked chest, and the sudden cold feeling somehow terminated the light and the sound and jolted me back into the horrible life I was enduring. I was violently sick after and unwell for a day or two, but pulled through. I could not face life as it was, and I quit my job, ended everything in the UK, and bought a one-way ticket to Cairo and backpacked my way to India, where I lived for a decade. I'm back in the UK now and in my 60s, but have absolutely no fear of death anymore. So when you mentioned other people having near-death experiences and the bright light, it made my skin crawl. So on to the final one that I'll read out. This individual wrote, as a bibliophile fanatic, one of my favorite genres is historical fiction and heroic fantasy. Aside from being great writers, the authors meticulously researched the areas they wrote about, giving accurate depictions of the cultures. Overwhelmingly, their tales take place in the eras of sword, shield, dagger, spear, mace, and battle axe. The tribes of these ancient Aryan nations worshipped and sacrificed to a plethora of gods and goddesses. It seems they always had trouble appeasing them. Every now and again, the gods would grant favours to a mortal, but far more frequently, the gods would torment them, causing tragic misfortune. Think the story of Job in the Old Testament. Hence the recurrent lamentations. We are just the playthings of the gods. The gods are cruel and capricious. The gods have destroyed my life, taking everything I loved from me. The gods delight in my misery, etc. Do these gods remind you of any other group of beings on topic here? Why would immortal gods derive satisfaction from mortal pain and suffering? I'm convinced that these gods and the archons, the cohorts of the demiurge, the ancient Gnostics wrote so much about, are one and the same entities. The names and attributes the ancients gave their gods and goddesses notwithstanding. Particularly, consider the subject of blood sacrifice. To try and placate the gods, the people, before divination ceremonies, and especially warriors before battle, would sacrifice animals, hoping this would convince the gods to grant them victory. I think precious few of them realized that they, the ones slain in battle, are the real sacrifices desired by the gods, just like today, just like throughout history. The appetite that these cosmic parasites have for loosh is insatiable. So I'll leave that there. The overriding theme then of this video, as we've reached the 10th volume, is acceptance of the nature of where we find ourselves. It is for me, anyway. And preparation for what comes next. And I do feel that we can find our way out of here if we are strong enough in our resolve. So the first part of that has to be a comprehension of where we find ourselves and what this place is all about and the purpose of it, what's in control of it, and what it wants from us, and what we may well encounter when we leave these bodies. And maybe that knowledge, coupled with the determination to never, ever come back to this place in any way, shape, or form whatsoever is enough to allow those of us who choose to move beyond and never have to come back. So, in the same way, the work of myself and many others exposes how rock bands and DJs and scenes and fads and trends are used to cultivate certain social attitudes to shape and mold societal groupthink and get people behaving in certain ways and believing certain things. The same process, the same principle applies to the spiritual matters. When you learn what a rock band or a sports star or a film actor is really all about and what their work has been trying to coerce you towards, you can break the spell and move beyond that and no longer be susceptible to the mind control. And that same concept works on a cosmic level as well. Break the mind control, break the spell, know better, resolve to never be fooled in the same way again. So, just on a personal level, maybe that's what my work into the music industry has really been preparing me for, and also to share this information with others. It was the preparatory steps in this process. Learning how you're duped through popular culture is a precursor to learning how you've been duped on the largest scale possible, the cosmic scale. So, all that having been said, moving on to a few announcements. I've knuckled down to the writing of my next book. The last one was fiction. It was The Gift and the Curse, my second novel. So I'm back to non-fiction for this one. It's another volume in the Musical Truth series. It's called Musical Truth Soundbites. So it's not Musical Truth 4 as such, but it does continue on from the trilogy. And it's going to consist of standalone stories which reinforce the points made in the earlier volumes. No shortage of information, hundreds and hundreds of files sitting on my desktop to be sifted through and assimilated, but I think that's probably what I do best. Aggregating information, bringing it all together from a wide variety of different sources and making sense of it and putting it across in an easily digestible, articulate way. And joining dots and seeing patterns and trends where they emerge. So that's what this book is going to be all about. I'm looking to get it out in the spring. Initially, I thought I might be able to make April or May, but I'm going to attempt to fast track it and get it out by the spring equinox, March. So a long winter ahead. I've got much work to help me get through it. So I'll be ploughing into this book and attempting to get it out by March. I'm also recording the audiobook version of Musical Truth 2, because that's the only one of my printed books so far, which is not also available in audio form. Doing these audiobooks is hugely time consuming and laborious. It literally takes months to read all that stuff and to produce it, make sure the audio is all properly formatted. It's a very long process, but that's underway. I'm a good way to getting that completed. And the aim with that one is to get it out this side of Christmas. So I'm aiming for December for the Musical Truth 2 audiobook, which will be available on Audible, but also you can get a download of the whole thing from me personally. And as soon as that's ready, I'll be announcing it on all my platforms. I want to mention that I have a new Substack page. Just started it. And I'm going to be previewing material from the upcoming book on Substack to my subscribers there. Already started, in fact. I've been posting articles on what I'm referring to as the gatekeepers of the dance music scene, electronic dance music. So I've posted articles so far on Pete Tong, Carl Cox, and Judge Jules. I've got one coming very soon on Norman Cook, aka Fatboy Slim. They're all going to be up on Substack, which means if you subscribe to that page, you can get to see these articles before they appear in the book. So if you're interested in that, the link to the Substack is below, and you're welcome to join my community there. My Patreon continues. This is a great way of supporting me and my work if you've found value in it. So if you choose to, you can become a Patreon subscriber, and that gets you access to exclusive content that I don't post anywhere else online. I offer at least 3 videos per month, and for a very small cost, the cost of a sandwich or a cup of coffee, you can become a Patreon supporter and get access to that information each month. So if you feel to support me in that way and you would like to get content that you won't find elsewhere, please consider becoming a Patreon. Again, links below. I've got a new TikTok account. This was a reluctant thing. I hate TikTok. I refer to it as TikToxic, but we might as well use the tools of the controllers against them wherever we can. So these platforms were obviously set up for mind control and surveillance and monitoring and data gathering and such, but we can still use them to our advantage because we can reach large numbers of people with empowering information that way. So for years, I've been doing that with Facebook, YouTube, all these other video channels, but I've always resisted TikTok, mainly because it's for kids, young people. And this is the point. It strikes me that TikTok is a great platform, a wonderful opportunity to get information of the type I put out in front of younger audiences, because I continue to look out at the audiences that I get to my live talks at conferences and meetups and such. And invariably, 90% of the audience is in the 50 to 70 age group. And it strikes me that this is largely preaching to the choir, because people of that sort of age, that point in life, have figured out that they've been duped, they've been mind controlled. They want to know the methods and the tactics that have been weaponized against them. And of course, there's value in that. But the generation that the controllers always have in their sights are the young ones, the youthful generation of any given time. And they're the ones we really need to reach. I mean, if I stepped up on stage at a conference and looked out and saw 18-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, I'd be absolutely delighted, because these are the people we really need to reach. They're the next generation who need to be informed and armed with this kind of information. So I feel TikTok is a great way of achieving that. I've got a friend, Sam, who's been working on formatting some videos for me. That's much appreciated. There's this thing, ClipCut, is it? This AI program that takes clips from longer videos and chops them up into easily digestible segments, puts subtitles on them and such. So there's a whole bunch of those on my TikTok account. And I would urge anyone that wants to support my work getting out there to a younger audience to share this TikTok channel and try and get others to subscribe to it. That's what we need, subscribers, because a channel thrives when it's got many, many subscribers getting access to the information. So link to the TikTok below. Upcoming events, quite a few of these over the future weeks. So we're looking into October for the next ones. Saturday, the 5th of October, I'll be doing my Dark Occult Aspects of Queen talk in Kent. This is Godmersham, which is quite close to Canterbury. Details of that one on my events page. The following Saturday, the 12th of October, a presentation titled Aleister Crowley, Rockstar, for good reason, because the 12th of October was Aleister Crowley's born date. And this one looks at the unlikely but massive influence that Crowley and his occult teachings have had on rock musicians through the ages. This one is in Waterlooville, which is just north of Portsmouth, Hampshire. So if you can get along to that one, that's the evening of 12th of October. Then going into November, Saturday the 16th, I'm going to be back in Stroud doing a weaponization of psychology talk there, Stroud, Gloucestershire. The following day, Sunday, 17th of November in London. Full details of that one to come, so keep an eye on the events page there. But a lot of people message me and say, hey, why don't you ever come to London and do a talk? I've done a few in London, but this is the next one. So if you can get along to that one, it's going to be the afternoon of Sunday, 17th of November. Then at the end of November, a double bill in Devon, if you're in the Southwest, on Friday the 29th. Still working out the details for it, but it's going to be in the sort of Exmouth area. And that's going to be in the evening of Friday 29th. Then on Saturday 30th of November in Barnstaple in the evening. And then on the 1st of December, on the way back, I'm going to be dropping into Somerset and doing a talk there very close to Yeovil. Again, details of that one to be finalised and ironed out, so keep an eye on the events page. But that's Canterbury, Kent, Waterlooville, Hampshire, Stroud, Gloucestershire, London, couple of dates in Devon, and Yeovil, Somerset in the weeks ahead. Full details at djmarkdevlin.com/events. And the final one I want to mention is to end on a bit of a happy, uplifting note. Imagine that, eh? In one of my videos. So my good friend Andy Spencer, who's a phenomenal DJ, does a really great live stream show once a month called Happy Daze. And it's going back to the golden years of house music and rave stuff, piano house anthems, basically. Andy does a great job. Live streams on Twitch and various other places, Facebook and various other live streams. And he's invited me to be the guest DJ for the next one. So that's Friday, the 4th of October. And I'm going to be digging in the crates and dusting off a few absolute gems from the late 80s through to the early 2000s. The stipulation is they have to be piano house tunes. So I've got them all lined up and it's going to be very uplifting. If you want to partake in that and you want a bit of joy in your life, then try and tune in if you can. I think it kicks off at 7 p.m. Friday, 4th of October, but the recording of it will be posted on my various platforms and on Andy Spencer's platforms as well. So really looking forward to that one. So that's about it. Thanks for watching and see you next time.